You need to learn why you keep setting yourself up for failure. Those are the words that a counselor once told me. Initially, I was thrown off guard by the fact that I thought it was her job to tell me why I was doing certain things in my life. Over time, though, that question really stuck with me and led me to begin my journey of self-discovery and improvement. And I'd like for that question to stick with you as well. All of you have the power to shape your tomorrow. So why not change the world? You can change the world in a multitude of ways. From environmental issues to the fight for human rights, there are plenty of voids to be filled in our world. However, none of this is possible unless you work on yourself first. You must learn that it is only in tending to your past and understanding your present that you can then shape and direct your future. And more importantly, none of this is possible without the acceptance of change. The hardest part about change is the transition from who you were to who you are. And all too often, we set ourselves up for failure. I'd like to open with an analogy, comparing one's life and well-being to that of a personal garden. We plant seeds in our lives, only to later find out whether or not they will blossom as weeds or flowers. It takes time to see how someone or something can affect you. So think about it. How do you envision your garden? Is it meticulously trimmed with every corner of a hedge squared away? Or is it overflowing, with vines breaking through and scaling up walls? Do you see any flowers in your garden? Or do you see any weeds? In a general sense, weeds sprout in our gardens in three forms. There are people, the past, and ourselves. And all too often, we allow for our gardens to be overrun with these weeds, which inhibit any personal growth or development. Now let's talk about these weeds a little bit more in depth. There are people in our lives who will drain you. What's more unfortunate is that we often allow for ourselves to be drained. To better assess my relationship with people, I studied codependency. Per Melody Beattie, a codependent person is someone who lets another person's behavior affect him or her, and who is obsessed with controlling that person's behavior. So, codependency inhibits a person from living out his or her own life due to the stress and supposed responsibility to watch over that other person. You could think of them as a caretaker. Now, in comparison to your garden, codependency is like a dandelion. On the outside, it's viewed as another flower, beautiful for its care and investment in other people. However, this seemingly pretty flower, at its core, is a weed, and it can affect many aspects of that person's life, their relationships with other people, and their relationship with themselves. Unfortunately, codependent people are often the victims to alcoholics, addicts, abandonment, or someone's abuse. So a codependent person winds up investing too much of their time trying to fix another person's life, rather than trying to understand the current issues of their own life. So by plucking the weed of codependency, a codependent person learns that he or she does not have to live a life of poisonous love or care. Instead, they learn to care for themselves. They learn to understand the triggers of their present life and learn to rid their garden of this weed for good. For this next weed, we need to take a step back. Although there are many aspects of the past, I would like to focus on repressed memories, which are deeply rooted in a person's conscious mind. Now, the main issue with repressed memories is the fact that they are repressed, meaning that a person has made uncomfortable thoughts or memories inaccessible or disguised to the conscious mind. Even though the person may not be able to recall the memory, this repressed memory can still affect them consciously. An example of this is a child who is abused either physically or emotionally by a parent and has trouble forming relationships later in his or her life. So think about gardening. You cannot simply pluck the top of a weed out of a garden. It's deeply rooted in the soil. So you must dig deeply in your conscious in order to fully extract this weed. With this, all repressed emotions can be felt. The experience of one's truth allows for one to truly mourn. This sounds counterintuitive. However, this ability to grieve actually gives back one's freedom and vitality. it's important to note that the contents of the unconscious repressed memories will remain unchanged unless the repressed person consciously activates these memories. Only then can change begin. I understand that this is often difficult to analyze as there's so much comfort in what is already known about ourselves. But you must tend to your past and analyze it. Allow for your curiosity and pain to trump the fear of the unknown parts of yourself. So keep digging. Finally, we come to the third weed, our reflections of ourselves. You can think of ourselves as the overall healthiness of the garden. Often, we lead ourselves to our own unhappiness. I've learned that our inability to process shame is often driven by our fear to be vulnerable. Yet it is in our vulnerability that we find our true selves. Many people believe that vulnerability is something to be ashamed of. I believe that this is due to the perpetual cycle of status quo and societal norms. And I'd like to counteract that with my favorite quote by Brené Brown. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage are not always comfortable, but they're never a weakness. It takes a lot of courage to face down the status quo and restrictions of society. Society has restricted many people's growth by placing them in a box of sorts. So one must break free of these self-imposed shackles in order to truly and fully live. By being vulnerable, we allow for ourselves to find our true calling and vocation in life. Additionally, we learn that we can live a fulfilled life by tending to the budding flowers of our garden. These flowers are fragile, vulnerable extensions of ourselves, our likes, beliefs, values, passions, etc. So it is only in tending to your garden and ridding yourself of these weeds that you can actually learn what you're truly passionate about in life. And I know this all sounds nice. However, actions speak louder than words. Change must occur. The difficulty in all of this lies in a paradox, wanting to change, but not allowing for ourselves to do so. Over the winter break, one of my coworkers asked me a very simple question. What are you most excited about your final semester of college? I thought, and I answered, I'm excited to live out the life of a woman whom I had worked so hard to become. Now I'll admit I shocked myself in my clarity and honesty in my response, but this led me to begin to reflect on just how long it had taken me to get to this point. From this, I developed the square one theory. Now the shapes of these figures will correspond with the shape of your garden, or the current state of your life. In order to better understand this theory, I'll use myself for an example. So everything that I believed in, and my own reflection of myself, is represented by this square. And I was able to develop this and foster this all the while living within my environment, which is represented in the gray. This includes who I hung out with, what organizations I was associated with, what jobs I worked, etc. Over time, I learned that I was very dissatisfied with my life. This belief was capitalized after I had studied abroad and opened my eyes to a new style of living, one that better reflected who I wanted to be. So from this, I learned that I aspired to be the circle. So I wanted change in my life, therefore I wanted to change the shape of my garden. But time and time again, this aspiration of a circle fell short. It fell short because it slipped through the cracks of the environment that I was developing it in, which was still the square. So I constantly found myself back at square one, having experienced no change at all. Thus the square one theory. Now I understood why my counselor was saying that I was setting myself up for failure. There's no way for an aspiration to become a reality unless you tend to it. Now, the circle is the shape of the garden that I wanted to live in, and the version of myself that I wanted to be. I learned that I needed to do much introspection and reflection in order to be able to reflect on the exterior environment and change it. I learned that I needed to tend to my garden and sort through the weeds of people, my past, and my own reflection of myself. So I began to weed out surface-level friendships, untangle myself from poisonous relationships, understand the intercomplexity of the relationship of myself to my parents, and find a job that made me proud to go to work every day. Now, this final stage is reached with one conclusion. It's not only the belief in myself, but the belief that I can change my environment, which allows for me to change my garden into a circle. The reason why this square one theory is so important is not only for the understanding and acceptance of change, but also the realization that you can change the shape of your garden. There are phases in our lives that are going to have a huge impact on us. I used to question, why are certain life experiences like studying abroad, graduating, or moving out of your childhood home so influential and transformative? The simple answer is, it's a big change. Yet I believe that there's more to it. It is in these times that you learn that you can change the shape of your garden. You learn that you can break down the walls of your garden and build them up again in a shape that is truly reflective of who you are. Strip yourself of the shape you thought was expected of yourself and seize the power to be authentically your own. Knowing that we have this power can either be constructive or destructive. When I returned from studying abroad, the walls of my garden had fallen down. I was ready for change. But I found it hard to build them again, considering I was thrown back into the regular routine of school. Soon, this led me to the deep abyss of loss of identity, and I didn't think I had the power to build again. But upon tending to my garden, sorting through the weeds of people, my past, and my own reflection of myself, I was able to scavenge a flower that had been hidden in my garden for so long. It was the love and belief in myself. Never lose this flower. With this breakthrough, I could build again. I had fresh soil to plant the new seeds of my life, knowing that their growth would not be squandered by the poisonous weeds of my past. My garden was overflowing and booming with blooming flowers of myself, and now I could confidently move forward, knowing that I was developing my authentic self. These flowers in our garden represent everything that we love and what makes us our own unique individuals. Tend to them, let them grow. Do not be fooled to compare the flowers of your garden to someone else's. This implants more poisonous weeds in your garden and slows your transformation as an individual. Choose growth. And if you truly want to change, allow yourself to ask the hard questions of life. Who is letting me, or who is helping me water my garden? And who is letting it dry out? Allow yourself to be vulnerable in those moments, but hold on to the truth that growth comes from this. Growth is not always predictable, but it is inevitable. Do not let your growth be destructive. Construct and build the walls of your garden, remembering that it is only in tending to your past and understanding your present that you can then shape and direct your future. Now, the walls of your garden are going to evolve over the years. You are responsible for their growth and vitality. Do not let the fear of change squander your ability to live a fulfilled life that is true to your authenticity. So I challenge you, take the leap. Uproot the weed and plant a new seed. Grow, blossom, and prosper. You owe it to yourself. Thank you.